Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name's Sophie, and this channel is chronicling my journey of living my best life with multiple chronic health conditions. Today I want to go over the physical therapy evaluation that I talked about briefly last week. Let's see, I will be looking at the actual physical therapy report because it is quite long. I will start by reading some of the evaluation notes. Sophie presents with the following movement system diagnoses: impairments in balance, endurance, and muscle strength of bilateral upper extremities and distal muscles, and activity limitations in ambulation, balance, endurance, functional mobility, self-care, and stair climbing, which impacts her participation in community and work. That is basically everything they tested in a nutshell. As I said previously, it was very thorough. The first part of the test was sort of little activities they have you do. In some cases, they ask you how you do it. For example, are you able to sit for 10 minutes without any support? As I am recording this, I am leaning forward on the desk, and that is one of the options. Able to sit independently with arms free for 10 minutes but requires rest or leans on support. So there's a bunch of things like that, and they do not have any normative data, so there's no percentile standard deviation or anything like that. So I'm just going to skip over those. No, anything other than doing it completely independent is not normal for someone of my age. That's a given. The first thing with normative data I get to on the report, which was actually, I think, the first thing I did, was strength. They used this device that they put on your arm or your leg or wherever they were testing, and when they pulled against you, that device was measuring how much strength they were using to overcome your strength, which is a lot different than the whole pull forward and don't let me pull your arm out type of thing that the neurologist normally does. I mean, it's basically the same thing, only this is giving you a quantifiable number, which is always nice because obviously doctors aren't all of the same strength, so this sort of keeps everything more the same for everyone who's tested. Anyway, the first one we'll go over is on the dominant side of my body, so my right side. They do elbow flexion. I was 4 standard deviations below the mean, so that would be bringing your lower arm up to your shoulder like in a bicep curl. Then they did wrist extension, so that is bringing your wrist up. I was 6.43 standard deviations below the mean. Hip flexion, that would be bringing your knee to your chest. So they're trying to pull your knee down and you're trying to pull it up. I was 1.92 standard deviations below the mean. And then ankle dorsiflexion, which is bringing your ankle up. And I was 6.42 standard deviations below the mean on the dominant side. So on the non-dominant side, for the elbow flexion, 2.69 standard deviations below, wrist extension, 4.26 below, hip flexion, 1.71 below, and ankle dorsiflexion, 5.37 below. Yes, my non-dominant side is stronger than my dominant side. That has always been the case. Even when I was lifting weights, that was the case. That was not surprising to me at all. The pattern of the more distal or further away from the bodies being weaker than the proximal muscles is common in mitochondrial disorders. And my distal muscles, so my ankles and my wrist, are extremely, extremely weak, over 6 standard deviations. Below where they should be. They also did repetitive reps and to see how much you decreased in strength. So the elbow flexion decreased 11.54, and they don't say what the hip decreased by. I did do the math, and I think it was like 12.9 or something. Then there was a lot more sort of tests that have no normative data, like standing on one leg for how many seconds, and there is a column that is the normative column, and most of my balance is decent, but when I close my eyes it's really, really poor. Scrolling to find more normative data. So this is with balance, standing. No, that's the seconds. I take it back. Moving on, we did a 30-second as well as a 1-minute sit to stand with all of the joints at 90 degrees. So your ankles are at 90 degrees, your knees are at 90 degrees, and your hips are at 90 degrees, which is supposed to be sort of how you're supposed to be sitting. And I only did 8 in 30 seconds. I feel like there is a standard deviation for that somewhere, but I just cannot find it at the moment. I know it's supposed to be 22, so I did less than half of what was expected in the 30 seconds. Then they did some fine motor control, which is something I've been saying all along I struggle with, especially with my right arm, my right hand. That is the only hand they tested. It would have been interesting to see the difference, because I do think there would have been a difference. And what they did for that was called the 9-hole peg test. I ended up buying something similar. Oh, it has stuff on it at the moment. Basically, it's these little pegs you take out of kind of like a shallow dish and you put them in the hole. And I was below 4 standard deviations below the mean, like 4.57. They did a similar test that was more a dexterity test versus a fine motor control test, where the pegs were larger. So instead of being like small, they were about this big, and you just had to like flip them over into the hole. It was 1.79 below standard deviations on that. And then the 6-minute walk test, which I've done in the past, I was 6.86 standard deviations below on that one. So, all in all, like I said before, was not expecting to do so poorly, because when you go to the neurologist and they do like the push-pull type of thing, and they have you do this for fine motor control, I don't really have a big problem with any of that stuff. But apparently, when you get more functional activities, like was tested with the physical therapy evaluation, I am sorry about that, severely limited in how well I do, which, like I keep saying, was very surprising. And I told the doctor when I saw them, they asked, "Are you weak?" And I was like, well, I don't know, I used to be a power lifter, so like, yes, I'm weaker than I was, but I don't know if I'm objectively weak. And now I can say that I am. But nothing formal came of that. She suggested that I do like strength and cardio training, which I would love to do, but I'm already sleeping a lot. So that's a whole other thing. That will be the next video. That's why this is coming out a day late. I've been just sleeping a lot this week because I'm not sleeping at night. But, so strength, cardio, and then she did say that if the fine motor control, if I wanted to see occupational therapy, that would possibly be helpful for me. My friend who cooks and cleans is actually an occupational therapist, so I've talked to her. She didn't think it was really worth me spending the money on the little tool that I got to practice the fine motor control, but it's something that I don't like not being able to do. Like, it's noticeable, like when I fill my pillboxes, and just whenever I'm handling something, so it is something I want to work on. It is why I was making bead animals way back when this all started, because I noticed my fine motor control was really bad, and it's better than it was then, and it's still horrible, so that's saying something. But yeah, it was really eye-opening of just how bad it is, and that I'm still somehow getting through the day, basically because I don't have a choice. But yeah, that's gonna be it for this one. If you guys have any questions, as always, you can leave them down below or shoot me an email. My email is in the description. And I hope you guys are having a good day whenever it is you're seeing this, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.